Okay, so I'm going to wire up the LEDs, or more to the point, connect some wires to the uh, the LED strips here, and then what I'm going to do, I've decided at that point, I'm going to actually start to bolt basically my clock together, because otherwise there's bits flying around everywhere. So that's why I've got these little aluminium spacers and hex key headed bolts here, which I'm going to be using to hopefully get everything kind of like basically put together. But without further ado, let's have a look here. I'm going to get some wire. I've got some black wire here, and I've got some red wire, and I'm going to get this to a reasonable length. Now, what do I mean by reasonable length? Well, let's have a see. I'm going to imagine that I'm going to make it probably twice as long as this piece of card, because I wanted to go from this corner and then wire through to the back of my clock, and it's better to have too much wire than too little wire. I don't want to have a huge amount of wire, but I'm thinking that times 2 is about the right length. So let's get the side cutters here. Let's just trim that off, and I'm going to get my red wire now, exactly the same routine, or what I could do with the red wire in fact is simply put them side by side, and cut it off to the same length, like that. So I've got my red wire and my black wire. I'm going to use the red for positive, the black for negative. I think I'll start with the red wire, the positive wire here first. I've got some side cutters, and these have a little kind of V cutter, the idea of which it cuts through the insulation, the red insulation, but not the wire itself. So I tend to find the secret here is basically to pinch it tight and then release your grip, and then just pull with your fingers. And notice there that I've wrapped the wire around my fingers to get a good grip so it doesn't slip. And I'm going to do the same on the other end, and that's actually quite a short length of exposed wire. This other side here, actually it's already exposed this side, but I'll make it a little bit bigger because that's going to go on the other side. There you go, that looks good. Now this is multi-strand wire, which means it's made up from lots and lots of little strands, and I'm going with this because I think it's going to be easier to feed through the hole and work within this case. So I'm just twisting those wires around so that the loose wires don't all splay everywhere, but they kind of curl into this nice thin braiding. Let's do it with the black wire as well. So I'm just going to wrap it around my fingers. I want to have one where I'm not revealing much of the exposed wire, and the other side I want to remove a little bit more wire. So we've got more insulation, should I say, so I've got more wire showing there. Okay, I want to attach the black wire to the negative side of the LED strip with the little negative symbol, and the red wire to the positive with the plus. So first of all, to do this, what I'm going to do in this particular case is add a little bit of solder in advance to the copper tape. So I'm going to turn the soldering iron on. I'm going to get my solder. Okay, make sure I've got a decent length there. And while I'm doing this as well, I'm going to get these thin nose pliers. I'm going to be using these in a second to hold the wire in place while I solder it. I tend to find that's quite a nice little weight there to do so. Okay, this is still heating up, so let's just pause while it heats. Okay, so we're up to about 280 degrees Celsius now, so that's hot enough for me to start to work. I'll move those thin nose pliers out of the way. Okay, I've just cleaned the tip there on the damp sponge, apply some solder to the tip here, and then I'm just going to apply the soldering iron to the pad, leave it for a few seconds, apply some more solder, and look, what I'm wanting to have here is this little, make sure they don't run away, a little bead of solder. Is it going to focus there? There we are, on the pad. That's what I am after. Okay, so let's just do the same thing on the other side. Just clean the tip, little bit of solder onto the soldering iron. That's going to help with the heat transfer. Apply the soldering iron tip to the pad for a few seconds, apply some solder, and there's another little bead of solder ready for me to work with. Okay, now let's go with the red wire first. I'm going to go with the wire, the end of the wire, which has got less wire exposed. I'm going to put it in the right place and then use my thin nose pliers to hold that in position. Solder and soldering iron ready. Bit of solder on the soldering iron, and then I'm going to apply that to the pad, and I'm wanting just to make sure that they join. Now interestingly, that wasn't quite soldering in the right place, so what I need to do here, let's just try and do that again. That didn't work out very well because the wire moved quite early on in the operation. Let's try that again. Okay, so I'm just going to rest that on top of the wire. I felt as if I pushed it away last time. It's just melting the solder, and that is better. That just felt better. The wire didn't move, and that's great. Let's go with the negative. Again, hold it in position there with the thin nose pliers. Make sure it's lined up. That looks good. Okay. Apply the heat. I don't want to push the wire away, which is what I did wrong the first time, and that's now in position. That looks fabulous. Now this solid connection here is not very strong. I've got to be super careful here. So what I am going to do is just make sure that these wires do just bend up like this. I think that's going to be a good idea, and kind of bend back in again. And I'm also thinking as well that what I'm going to do, I'm going to bend them in here, I'm going to bring them along, and I'm going to get some clear tape, and I'm going to tape these down. And I think, let's see it like that. That looks good. There you go. That looks nice. And then the tape just went a bit over the edge here. I'm just going to wrap that in. Okay, so that looks fabulous. And you know, just to make sure everything's still correct, let's go back to the multimeter. Let's go to that conductivity setting. Let's go with a negative. I'm going to put my black terminal against the negative, and I'm going to put my red terminal against the negative here at the end of the LED strip, and that should go to 0 or approximate to 0, which it does. And the positive there to the positive side, which it does. So that's perfect. So I've got a good electrical connection. It's a good idea there to always test all the connections are good, and that means now I'm ready to then wire that up to the rest of my clock. So I'm going to pause at this point. How are we doing on time? No, I've got 7 minutes. No, I'll pause. I'll start a new video. Okay, let's stop this and start a new one.